join me shortly.
Okay. PS, you just want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Dunstan Bryan, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Thank you. Reading and confirmation of the minutes. The minutes were previously circulated. Are there any corrections from the minutes? If not, could I have a motion for confirmation? Member Sibley so moved, seconded by Member Guy. Any matters arising from the minutes? Okay. All right. We're going to the substantive matter. Before I invite the Permanent Secretary, I just want to say a little bit about the process of the Public Accounts Committee and how the committee works. I think there's a perception in the public domain that only when we have meetings and raise issues that the committee is actually doing its work. That's quite the contrary. In fact, we will table here today a number of responses from ministries, agencies, and departments based on the follow-up that the committee has done outside of committee meetings in response to issues that either arise during meetings or arise from the Auditor General's annual report. In fact, as a matter of course, the committee clerk, once the Auditor General's report is tabled, writes to each MDA that is highlighted as having outstanding issues, requesting responses to those outstanding issues. Based on the responses, the committee then determines whether we call the specific MDA here to appear before us. So I'll be tabling later a number of responses that have been received from MDAs who have not actually appeared at the PAC, but they have answered the outstanding questions satisfactorily. Now, obviously, when there are issues that the committee believes requires the presence of the ministry, agency, or department, then we would call that particular ministry here to answer the questions here. In this specific instance in relation to the Ministry of Health, before I invite the PS to respond, there was a letter sent from last year based on the outstanding appropriation accounts, and the Permanent Secretary provided a response, I believe in March, with a timeline as to when the appropriation accounts would be brought up to date. As a follow-up to that, in April this year, the committee clerk again wrote to the Permanent Secretary on the outstanding matters, and again there was a response provided by the ministry in terms of how it planned to address the outstanding appropriation accounts. The Permanent Secretary has just provided for us a set of documents which we have obviously not had an opportunity to go through, and I will ask him to present his response to the outstanding issues and how they plan to address and what they have done so far, and the committee will determine based on having an opportunity to read the documents and also the Auditor General's department, how we will proceed after that. So, Sir Permanent Secretary, I invite you to respond in relation to the issues of the outstanding appropriation accounts.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members of the Public Accounts Committee, team members from Auditor General, or my colleague from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. This statement that I will provide is in addition to the other supporting documents that would have been provided, and it's a more detailed presentation with the supporting evidence of the work that has been done by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And I will read the statement verbatim for the purposes of the record and for the purposes of posterity. In March 2023, well, I said this team, but the team is not here as yet. The team from the Ministry of Health and Wellness provided a commitment to the PAC to address the status of the appropriation accounts for the ministry as well as the government chemist and the Bellevue Hospital. The team also accepted the findings of the Auditor General that the delayed statements were a breach of the FAA Act and needed to be remedied. The statements in question are for a period of 10 years, beginning financial year 2012-2013 to financial year 2022-2023, totaling some 39 statements. We reported at the time of our last presentation to PAC that a special assignment was developed to bring the ministry in compliance by clearing the backlog. As outlined in Appendix 1 to this report, work on this intervention started in October 2022. The special assignment continued to May 2023 and was further continued in January of 2024. We reference Appendix 2 and 3 to this document. Based on this effort, the status as at June 30, 2024, of the 10-year backlog of appropriation accounts for the three entities are as follows. Total number of statements, 39. Of that total number, the internal audit unit has been provided with 33 statements. The internal audit unit has been able to conduct a verification check on 33 of the 33 statements that have been provided. However, 26 of those statements were returned for errors and corrections. So that remaining 7 statements have been certified by the internal audit unit. A detailed report from the internal audit unit on each statement is provided in Appendix 4 of this document. It is to be noted from the report that the internal audit unit was unable to certify the majority of the reports due to the fact that statements contained errors. As outlined in the Auditor General's Report 2023, Section 2.1.5, this issue is not unique to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, as the report cites 391 statements that were outstanding spanning financial years 2009 to 10 to 2022 to 23. Of this number, the Auditor General's report stated 184 represent appropriation accounts. The report from the Auditor General also highlights that these outstanding statements were due inter alia to delays in providing the relevant supporting documents, inaccurate and incomplete statements. Given the ministry's previous commitment to this committee, we therefore conducted a comprehensive root cause analysis to determine the best way forward to remediate the challenges identified. Based on this assessment, the following 2 main issues were identified and is further detailed in Appendix 5 to this report. Appendix 5 being the report from the Finance and Accounts Division of the Ministry. The first major challenge outlined is the issue with the financial management software, FinMan. Financial management software, FinMan, is a legacy system which was replaced by the Government Financial Management Information System in 2029. The FinMan was the transaction processing and accounting system.
2019, just for...
Sorry, 2019, sorry. Processing and accounting system used by the ministries, departments, and agencies as a tool for budget management and execution. The solution was not centralized and was not web-based, and as such, updates had to be manually uploaded to servers that are maintained by the host, MDA. Based on the assessment done, it was found that errors in the report prepared by FinMan included financial years 2023 to 2018. These errors...
2013 to 2018.
2013 to 2018. These errors included what is not limited to missing data from general ledger control accounts, appropriation in aid expenditure source of funds not displayed on the appropriation accounts of the ministry, and limitation in access to financial management server for multiple users due to legacy issues. Appendix 6 to this report details the various and varied email trails beginning in June 2017, where the issues of errors were pointed out to the Accountant General's Department and the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service regarding the multiple tickets raised to address the errors. Most recent being June 2024. The trails culminate in an email dated July 1, 2024, where recommended actions were provided for corrections in the errors identified. These suggestions are currently being implemented. Appendix 7 is a letter to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service dated November 6, 2023, escalating the issue of the errors in FinMan. The ministry also wrote on the said matter to the Accountant General's Department on April 22, 2024, Appendix 8. Appendix 9 is a letter from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service dated July 9, 2024, advising of the redress mechanism and the report from their engagement with the Accountant General's Department, indicating that the matters were resolved on June 30, 2024. The second issue identified by our analysis is the certification of payment vouchers. To certify statements, all payment vouchers must be signed off by the responsible officers for the transactions. In some instances, vouchers may not be signed by way of oversight or improper checking procedures. In conducting this 10-year backlog project, the team identified some 1,340 vouchers that were not properly validated due to the lack of authorizing signatures at the different levels. Given this issue, and given the lapse in time, the ministry undertook a process of finding officers who were still employed in the ministry but in different positions, still in the wider government service, or those who were no longer in service, retired, but were available in country. This in an effort to complete the authorization process of the payment vouchers. Through this, we were able to sign some 800 vouchers. In January 2024, after exhausting efforts to locate officers, a request was made of current officers performing the duties of preparers, certifiers, and authorizers to sign on the payment vouchers. The officers were uncomfortable in complying with the request, and Appendix 10 outlines their concerns in writing. On March 26, 2024, the Ministry of Health and Wellness wrote to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Appendix 11, seeking their guidance on how to proceed on the matter. The Ministry of Finance responded on June 20, 2024, Appendix 12, outlining the process through which officers can manage the process. In our current discussion with officers, they are still apprehensive and have asked that they be advised independently. While the ministry works with our stakeholders in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service and the Accountant General's Department to resolve the issues affecting the reporting errors, there is work being undertaken to complete the task. Since Friday, July 12, 2024, 2 additional reports were reviewed and certified by the Internal Audit Unit, bringing the completion rate to 9 of 33. The statement for 2023-2024 is slated to be completed by August 2024. This represents a change in the strategy to treat with statements that can be completed on the GFMIS. The goal of the ministry is to complete the backlog and be up to date with the appropriation accounts. This should be March 2025. I'll make a correction. By March 2025. This is given the time required to complete each year's review and the need of the ministry to continue internal audit function in accordance with the audit plan and the risk assessment of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierce. I'm just going to ask the first question, and then Member Guy will come after me. The apprehension of the officers in signing off relates to the fact that they would not have been the responsible officers at the time the transactions were done. You indicated that they have been asked to be advised independently. Is it that they're seeking a legal opinion from the Attorney General's Department on whether they can sign these things off without there being any responsibility, without them being held responsible for something for which they were not responsible?
That's correct. That's correct.
So have you sought the advice of the...
Not as yet, because we just got the recommendation from the Ministry of Finance on when was that? June 20.
All right, I'm going to go to Member Guy. I just put in Ms. Blake on notice. I know this, and I come into you. I know the Ministry of Health is not the only ministry in this particular situation, so I'm going to come to you in terms of how we treat with the other ministries who would be in a similar position. Member Guy.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are basically along the same lines, and having regard to the fact that we just received this correspondence from the ministry now. PS and/or Ms. Blake, could you advise this committee what was the advice of the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Health as to how to proceed? And secondly, if the officers are still uncomfortable with this process and are seeking to be advised independently, legally, that is, how is it then, Permanent Secretary, can you give an assurance that it can be completed in light of this challenge that is being faced, or potential challenge that is being faced?
Just identify yourself and the position you hold at the ministry.
Yes, good morning all. I'm Barrington Thomas, and I'm the Principal Director in the Accounting and Financial Policy Branch at the Ministry of Finance. Regarding the advice given to the Ministry of Health and Wellness for the treatment of missing vouchers, it was outlined in the letter to us, the Ministry of Finance, that officers were uncomfortable to sign because previous officers who should have signed are no longer available, either not working at the entity, so maybe deceased and otherwise. Now, in light of that, there is a verification process for the longevity of any source document, payment vouchers, to ensure that it authenticates the adequacy and accuracy of any payment made. The suggestion to the Ministry of Health was that officers should be identified who has current authority or capability to carry out these authentication on current vouchers. And the exercise which should be done is that these officers will start the verification process from scratch. So it's not that the payments were already made. So what these officers should be doing is reviewing the transactions, ensuring that all source vouchers that are required to make a payment are in place, ensuring that in terms of funds was actually available and didn't lead to any over expenditure. They're also reviewing the document to ensure that it is in alignment with the Appropriations Act, which was passed in that financial year. Also, that the necessary procedures that should have been followed in making a payment was actually followed, because the payment is already made. So that's the only verification that the officers are being asked to make. And once those verifications are made, then signatures could be assigned based on the validation process that has taken place. And that's the advice that have been given. Also, it was recommended that what can be used is what is called an honor certificate, whereby it is not the general process of going through how a general payment voucher is made, but it's a tool provided to entities where sometimes original bills can't be found and so forth, and that's provided for, I don't want to say the circular now, I think it's circular 11. It provides for honor certificate, and that's the recommendation. Based on the honor certificate, use this as a guide to verify the vouchers, sign the vouchers, so the process can continue.
Member Guy has a follow-up, and then I'll come into you, Member Simmons.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Thomas, I had occasion to glance through your correspondence to the Ministry of Health, and I can understand the concerns and the trepidation of those officers who would have to sign, because I see here where I, John Brown, certified that this voucher was prepared in keeping with Section 591 of the FAA Act Financial Instructions. I hereby accept and declare that I shall be held personally liable for loss of government to the government that may arise in respect of this voucher not being in compliance with the said financial instructions. Now, any officer would be uncomfortable with that if they are being asked to do something that they were not au fait with, even having researched the particular document. Is there an exit to this particular thing? And I can understand that they are seeking legal advice, because if I'm going to sign off on something that I never knew anything about, though I'm an officer at another level, as you have suggested, then it puts me in a precarious position, and my tenure at my work is in jeopardy. And secondly, I'll be liable for something that I don't know anything about, and it may affect my retirement benefits, it may affect my pay. So how do we, if it's possible to circumvent this particular section to have the accounts completed?
Before you answer, let me go further. I'm looking at Appendix 10, which is a memo from the Principal Financial Officer, Mr. Donovan Davis. Is he here? To Ms. Brenda Lee Latham, Director of Financial Accounting. And I'm just going to read it. It says, reference is made to your memo dated February 12, 2024 regarding the signing of prior year payment vouchers on behalf of officers who are no longer employed to the ministry. In responding to the request, reference is made to the FAA Act and Instructions 2017 Section 5.9.4, which states, 5.9.4, disciplinary action for unauthorized improper payment. Point 1, where an unauthorized payment is made, the culpable officer shall be held liable for disciplinary action. Where an improper payment is made, the officer who signs the voucher shall be held responsible and may be liable to surcharge for the amount of the improper payment. Please note that I am not in a position to sign these vouchers. Now, if this is so, I share the concern of the officers who are being asked to sign things that they can't substantiate or verify, because it means that they could be subject to disciplinary action, they could be subject to a surcharge, and this can have implications for their professional standing within the ministry and the possibility of their own reputations and financial injury based on what is here. So I do understand that, and I think it's a legitimate concern on the part of the officers there, given the regulations that exist in terms of disciplinary action.
Right, Chairman. I think at this stage, the payments having been made, what they are being asked to do is to check the accuracy of the vouchers, which means there are supposed to be supporting documents somewhere that the current persons could look at and make a statement that this seems to be Correct. So that is the level of responsibility that we were thinking that they would have at this stage.
But let me ask a question, and I'll ask, I'll come into your syllabus. In the absence where, and you can fill in, if the supporting documents are not there, and there may be errors, there may be omissions, and they're still being asked to sign off on payments without that detail, then they would be exposing themselves.
Agreed. So in that situation, they probably wouldn't sign. But if the documentation is available and they can check the accuracy, then I'm not seeing an issue.
All right, Member Sibley's, then the peers.
Chair, right there where you are, the response from the Ministry of Finance on its Appendix 12 as tabled here, the number 3 on the second page, I joined my colleague who expressed that he could understand why members of staff of the Ministry of Health who are asked to sign would have some amount of concern. And the explanation by the Ministry of Finance just now is saying, no, they don't have to worry. Is that it? And if they don't have to worry, why was it put here in the letter? Because I want to go somewhere further with it. So could you quickly tell me what's the suggestion here by the Ministry of Finance?
Okay, as it is worded here is exactly how it is in the circular. So we were quoting the circular. You would notice on the recommendation that we did say that they may use the honor certificate. So I don't think we are averse to some amendments being made. We'll probably seek legal advice, but we were just suggesting how they could deal with the matter, and this is the quotation. This is actually a quote from our circular.
There would have to be some indemnification of the individuals involved, that, you know, they are being asked to do something in good faith to ensure that accounts are being brought up to date. They were not employed at the time in these positions. There is an exposure to them. You would hope that nobody would pursue it, but the regulations allow an accounting officer to pursue it. So they would have to be indemnified to take the particular actions they're being asked to do to ensure that their accounts are up to date. Siblings?
Yes, and to add to that, I would, the question that I really wanted to ask is the internal auditor who would have gone through these reports, had they indicated if any of these vouchers, they have red flagged it in terms of misappropriation, suspicion of misappropriation? Have they given some sort of guideline to say that these vouchers, we would have reviewed it, we recognize that the money was spent, there's nothing out of order with it, save and except that they were not properly signed, to give the officers some amount of comfort for them to sign. I do hope there's this route where persons are going to, where the legal opinion is going to be sought, and I don't. Individuals can take sought their own legal advice, but I think it is the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health jointly should seek advice on this matter.
Well, I would say the Ministry of, but let me tell you, the issue is not specific just to the Ministry of Health. There are a number of other ministries, may not be as many years outstanding, but there are other ministries in a similar position with outstanding appropriation accounts who may have the same issue and whose officers may be as apprehensive as the Ministry of Health's officers. So it goes beyond being specific to the Ministry of Health, and there would have to be some guidance to those officers who are being asked to sign off on these vouchers.
It also brings me to the point of, I mean, this is quite alarming to see that these irregularities is happening right across ministries, including that of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, just throughout the civil service. And I wonder what would account for this, for so many vouchers to be completed but not completed. The transaction has taken place where persons have been paid, jobs have been done, but the requirement by the policy has been, for want of a better word at this moment, ignored, and so many, what is happening in the civil service at the accounting aspect? Why is it that we are having payment vouchers going through the system, or not going through the system, but transactions are completed? It is not, right? And it is up from 2013. And I am just wondering if the auditors had audited beyond 2013, if they would not have found the same thing. So I don't know if it's the Ministry of Finance who should respond to me, Chairman, but it is something that I think they would be very concerned about, being that the funds come from the Ministry of Finance, and this is a gaping gap that need to be closed to ensure that there is accountability. How do we fix this? It's happening, seems to me, more than 1 decade now, and it needs to be fixed.
Right, just to bring a little bit of clarity in terms of separating the issues of late submission of financial statements and instances where there are unsigned payment vouchers. The ministry agrees that there are a proliferation of late financial statements. However, from our understanding and submissions to us, we have not seen multiple entities, neither multiple instances where there are unsigned payment vouchers. So this matter is not something that comes to the Ministry of Finance on a regular basis or on any multiple occasions. So we just want to make that issue clear, that it's not a case where there is a proliferation of unsigned vouchers by multiple ministries. This situation is more than likely a one-off or so on. It's not a proliferation. Or
Sure.
if it is a proliferation, it has not been sent to the Ministry of Finance for a way forward in terms of how
Well, the PS
we
seems to
action.
have a different view from you.
I hear my colleague, Barry, Mr. Thomas, but you wouldn't be able to know that you have this proliferation because you have, as outlined in the Auditor General's report, you know, you have a significant number of audit late submission. The only reason why we can point to our issue is the fact that we have done the deep dive and we have done the root cause analysis. Remember, the Auditor General's report pointed out that there are 391 statements that are outstanding spanning financial year 2009 to 2023. 184 appropriation accounts are outstanding. We are only 39 of the 184. And I'm saying until you have done the root cause analysis on all of the 184, you cannot definitively say that the issues that we have identified in the Ministry of Health is not existing in other ministries. You need to do the deep dive. The only difference here is that we in the Ministry of Health and Wellness have sought to address the matter by confronting all of the issues that are preventing us from finalizing the accounts and bringing these issues to the Ministry of Finance attention. So I understand where Mr. Thomas is coming from, but I think it wouldn't be complete in saying that, you know, it is not an issue until you have done the analysis.
Point taken. Member Sibley's.
P.S. Having your team, having done the analysis, did you ascertain the reasons for these vouchers not being signed?
So yes, we did. And some of them are, as I pointed out in the statement, are errors in process. And as outlined in the ministry, by the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Finance has asked us to give us the standard operating procedure that we're putting into place to ensure that these errors do not take place again. And we have done that. That new process was put in place, I think, in 2018 to ensure that, because it was an issue that was identified from an internal audit report. But we're talking about the ministry processes about 14,000 vouchers a month. We're talking about 12 months over 10 years. We're talking about statements of vouchers, about 1.6 million vouchers. 1.6 million vouchers. So the fact that we have an error factor of less than 1%, egregious, agreed. But in terms of a risk profile, so I know 1,000 and odd vouchers sounds a lot, but remember we are aggregating across 10 years, so it's a significant amount of time. So I wouldn't want the idea to be proliferated that there's this massive issue of persons not compliant with the process of authorizing payment vouchers. It is an issue, and we are addressing it. It's just that you have this massive backlog that makes the addressing of the issue significant. We are cognizant of the fact, though, that every instance of this error is problematic, and the process has been put in place of ensuring that it doesn't reoccur.
I gather that the public would really want to be comforted by you or your officer, Mr. I think
Davis.
Mr. Davis, to explain what has been put in place now that would prevent this reoccurrence. And you said from 2018 that this has been put in place. So can you explain to us here and to the public to make us comfortable that we are not going to see this going forward from the Ministry of Health?
Based on the process of the payment.
One second. Member Guy has a joiner.
Yes,
And then.
a joiner. Thank you very much, Chairman. Having looked at page 4 of the statement by the Permanent Secretary and recognizing that in 2019 the system was replaced by another one, can you say whether the same measures that you had put in 2018 for the Finman system will also apply to this particular one?
What we have done recently...
Just speak a little closer to the mic, please.
What we have done recently to correct this problem is that we have instructed the payment team is that every other day, all the vouchers processed should be printed and signed. What happened is that the vouchers are not printed immediately because of the system. When the payments are sent to Treasury, you can't print the voucher immediately. You have to wait until the voucher said paid before you can print. So you may send the payment to Treasury today, however, the payment may not be settled until tomorrow or Thursday. So you have a time lapse. So we ask that each day somebody go in the system and print those vouchers.
And so let me ask, who does the verification to ensure that they are in fact signed? Well, no, I'll come in, but just answer that part first.
The Director of Finance and Accounts does that.
So he or she has to physically verify that every single one of those vouchers, the 14, how much you said, 14,000 a month?
Yeah. Yes.
Are signed? That
Yes,
person
Chair.
has to do that?
Yes, Chair.
Wow, okay.
Chair, there's something just went off a while ago. You said that the system, you have to have it, it has to state that that payment has been made. That's what you said?
Yes, the voucher.
Before we get the officers signing the vouchers?
Yes.
And just, hold on one second.
Do you have digital
Member
signature?
Simbis, just clarify. This is the new system now, not the old Finman.
The new system.
The new system, okay, all right.
There's no digital signature in that system that will act as authorization along the way, because if it is that you are going to have, you have to have the thing paid, and then after it is paid, then we go and do the check-in, the certifying, and the authorization of the payment. That seemed to me a little backward and will lend itself to the same problem that we now have. So is there a digital signature?
One second, I think Ms. Blake wants to come in here, or Mr. Yeah? On this issue, yeah.
Yes, I would just want to also advise that it's a matter of the accepted standard operating procedure within an entity. So there are a few options that an entity could execute. At the start of a processing of a voucher, at the status new, when that voucher is being prepared, the voucher can be printed at new. When a certifying officer is to certify that voucher, that physical voucher can be handed to the next person who is in line, who will also certify and system and sign. What happens, it acts as a dual where the system is controlled by usernames and passwords. So the same user that execute that transaction on the system, that physical wet signature is required on the voucher, which is in front of them. So there's no need to wait until the voucher is paid to send it back down the line. The voucher, there is an option that you ensure that you sign along the way. Just as if you have a contract in front of you, you sign the contract before you move it to anywhere else. So it's just a matter of what process, internal process, an entity adopts.
Mr. Thomas, are you talking about the same system that the Ministry of Health use, that you have the option of the web signature or the digital signature. Is that the same system you're talking, or you're just talking generally?
Just to be clear, not a web signature, not a digital signature. The system doesn't have a digital signature. What it has is a access control. So you have the user who logs on the system, records the user who inserts the voucher. It records the user that certifies the voucher. However, based on the current instructions, financial instructions, a signature is required, and that is a wet signature on a printed voucher. And as such, in the operating procedure adopted by an entity, they can choose to start from scratch with that physical voucher, ensure that it is signed before it moves to the next level. So, and that's the same FinMan system or GFMS, Government Financial Management System.
So tell me something. It is therefore maybe it's the policy that needs to catch up with the technology, because the policy is saying that you must have a signature on paper, per se, right? But we are living in a time where everything is computerized, and only the authorized person would be able to move the process along, correct? With this new system.
Yes.
And therefore, there should be a log system. They call it an audit trail in IT world, right? And therefore, that audit trail should be used as the evidence to say that Donovan Davis was the person who did the process, this particular process, because Donovan Davis would be the person with the password or all the required preventative measures for unauthorized persons to be doing that transaction. Is that so?
So, sorry, let me. So, what?
No, what I want to understand, if the system is set up in such a way that Mary Jones cannot do what Donovan Davis ought to do.
That's correct. So there is a separation of the system is set up, remember, with all of the controls that are supposed to be in an audit, in an accounting solution. So all the controls are there.
Okay. And therefore, Chairman, what I'm saying, and I'm saying to the Minister of Finance, if this is so and the audit trail can be printed to evidence that the various persons who are supposed to be checking, who are supposed to be certifying, and who are supposed to be authorizing has done so, then the next step is for the Ministry of Finance and the auditors or consultant to look at this thing and to make the appropriate amendments to the policies. Because hearing this make me backtrack a bit from what I said earlier, that really the civil servants have done their work, but the system is set up in such a way that create duplicates, and they have to be doing the same work that they would have done in 8 hours. So they have to find another 8 hours to do that work which they have done, which cause a number of us not to get service when we go to these various places, because the persons who are supposed to be doing it, they have to be in their office doing work that they have done already. We seriously need to look at today's world in the way we ought to. and rewrite some of our policies. We can't go into the future, Mr. Chairman, and then cast this cloud over civil servants because of the policy is not catching up with the technology. That's my opinion.
All right, let me say this. I don't want to spend too much time on this level of detail, but I want to come back to the broader point in terms of your ability to complete the outstanding appropriation accounts. So there's an outstanding matter in terms of seeking the opinion from the AG's, the Attorney General's department here, to provide comfort to these officers who are being asked to authorize and sign off on expenditures that they were not part of at the time. So that needs to be done. I believe there has to be a conversation, though, beyond the legal advice. I think it has to be initiated by the Ministry of Finance, given that this issue is not unique to the Ministry of Health, as to how other officers in similar positions should act to ensure that we can clear the backlog of all of these appropriation accounts which are outstanding. I think those two things need to be done as a matter of urgency. I mean, there's another point raised by the member about the inefficiency, so to speak, of the system and whether that needs to be refined to ensure that you have the controls, which you need, but that it can operate in a more timely fashion and that people are not necessarily being asked to manually. When you tell me that there's an officer who has to physically check a signature on 14,000 vouchers a month, that can't be a good use of anybody's time. For somebody to just come to work every day to just make sure, that can't make sense. So that has to be reviewed. That can't be what somebody should be doing if that is what they are. There has to be a different role for somebody in a scenario like that, and that's a task that you should be able to automate. So there's also that to look at. But for me, the main point is you have given us a time frame of 2025, but without the resolution of this issue, you won't be able to get to your time frame.
Right. Thank you very much. So, as much as we are talking through it, eventually it's going to land on the desk of the accounting officer. And there's only one such person in every ministry. It's the permanent secretary. So eventually it's going to, because the auditors are not going to certify the appropriation accounts without it. They are not going to do it. And therefore, a decision, once I have exhausted and I've been properly advised, eventually I will just have to sign and take accountability for it.
All right, understood. Ms. Blake, you wanted to say something on this?
Chair?
I'll come into you, member. Oh, just turn it.
No, I was just saying something, Chair, and I take some guidance from Member Sibley's in respect of his, and as you have said also, the need to change with adapting to the change in time. However, I want to exercise some caution because of the 1.4 million vouchers that the Permanent Secretary alluded to, it's only 1,340, which means therefore that the civil servants have been doing, the public servants have been doing what they're supposed to be doing in the main, right? So, I
Correct.
mean,
he said it was less than 1%, which is...
Yeah, no, but I'm just quoting the numbers based on what he's saying. And it does not mean that it's a system that cannot work. However, I do take the point that we need to adapt with the change in times and the fact that there's technology that has to be in sync with how we approach it. But the only point I was making is that the vast majority, 99% of the times, it was done correctly by the public servants, you know, and it's less than 1% which did not go according to what is the requirement of it and is over this 10-year period. So even then, but it is important that people follow the established policy as it is rolled out at each period or interval.
Ms. Blake?
Right. Thank you for that, Dr. Guy. Just because I just wanted to make the point that we don't have somebody sitting down to look at 14,000 vouchers at any one time. the system is set up that as you're making a payment, you're expected to get the voucher certified and authorized, etc., as in any other business. Just also to note that the government of Jamaica has not yet agreed on a digital signature policy for financial systems, for financial documents. So that is something that Cabinet would have to agree on. And as far as I'm aware, it is being pursued.
I'm going to ask the Auditor General's department, putting you on the spot for an opinion. As the permanent secretary has said, ultimately, as the accounting officer, in this case, he is responsible. If the ministry is unable to get the other officers to sign off, he would have to do so. The question that I would ask from your perspective as the auditors, would that satisfy the Auditor General's department if all efforts having been exhausted, he doesn't have that choice? Because there's also an issue as the accounting officer being held accountable for things which are not necessarily totally within his purview and control. Yes.
I just want to add to what the chairman asked in the auditors. And would you find the log, the audit trail of the system as assistance to say that the persons who ought to check and the person who ought to certify and the person who ought to authorize did in fact did that based on the control of the system? Would that also aid in moving the process along?
Okay, I agree with you that there is an audit trail within the accounting software, and yes, you could see the responsible officers who certify the payment and who authorize the payment. Notwithstanding that, though, going forward, the ministry or all MDAs should ensure that when they are making a payment, they follow the requisite procedures to ensure that the payment is adequately supported. As it relates to the question regarding the signing off by the accounting officer, the auditors, internal auditors, they do not give an opinion on the appropriation account. It is the Auditor General who gives an opinion on the appropriation account. Notwithstanding, it's a requirement for them to verify that the transaction is in keeping with the requisite guideline. So the accounting officer, he can submit, if he submits the account, the appropriation account, these accounts will be qualified. And he has to make a decision whether you want those, a qualified opinion on those appropriation accounts.
But what we have heard here is that the reason, one of the main reasons for the internal auditor not being able to validate is the vouchers not being certified or authorized, right? And you mentioned qualification of audit, which means something bad.
Correct.
Right? And the objective of the person who would be checking, certifying, and authorizing these vouchers, wouldn't it be the same from the computer point of view, the software point of view, where those persons, once the controls are in place in the system, would be similar to them doing it manually? And if that is so, would the auditors consider it as the persons doing what they ought to do and move away from qualifying their account?
Yes, if we can establish that they were verified and authorized. However, the supporting documentation is critical in order for us to verify that transaction.
All right, thank you. As a follow-up, I don't know who is going to seek the advice from the Attorney General's Department. I think PSU would have to write to get that advice. I think in the interim, I don't know how long it will take for you to get the advice. I think it's important for the Ministry of Finance to have a discussion with the various MDAs, not just the Ministry of Health, on this particular issue. We know it is a problem here, and you have indicated you know it's a problem because you have done the deeper analysis. So it could be a problem in other ministries, but they haven't done the analysis yet to determine how widespread it is. There has to be a way forward to resolve this, because the outstanding appropriation accounts reflect badly on the accounting officer in the ministry, and it prevents the type of analysis that the Auditor General needs to do to execute her responsibilities as, so to speak, the guardian of the public finances. So I suggest it may be at the level of the permanent secretaries, through the cabinet secretary, for there to be some discussion about how you deal with this particular issue, so that we can resolve it, not just for the Ministry of Health, but across the board for the other ministries as well. Finally, Member Sibley's on this point.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's really a legal matter, having listened to all that have been said. You know, I don't think it's a matter for any attorney to advise whether persons can sign and so on. I think it's a matter for the Ministry of Finance to look at the policy, as I had said earlier, to see whether or not, in light of the circumstance that the system that they would have signed off on for the ministry to use, if whether or not that system has the control and the controls are working, and if they are working in accordance to best practices, that these be accepted through a policy to say that whereas the policy so-and-so has stated that there should be a signature, that the system, once the audit trail can prove that the officer, that it is acceptable. I think this is something that the financial secretary and her team could look at, because I don't see it as a legal issue.
Well, the reason is, I hear what you're saying. I think that is important in terms of going forward, but given the backlog that you have and the reluctance right now of the officers to sign off on these accounts, and the need to ensure that we have those appropriation accounts, I do think they need to be properly advised. They have asked for it. From just my cursor reading of the documents, I would support them. They need to be properly advised, and then have a discussion maybe at the level of permanent secretaries about how we treat with this. So I would recommend you still seek that advice to ensure that you are covered and the officers are also covered on this issue. Members, anything else on this particular issue? We have a number of other outstanding matters that we're going to go to. PSI members, any other questions for the Ministry of Health team? We have other issues not related to them. Member Miller, you wanted to ask? Maybe that's a sign, eh? That one not working either. You'll soon be on it.
I tell you. Thank you, Sir Chair. I just want to commend the staff PS of Ministry of Health for the tremendous work that they have been doing, you know, listening to the responses that were given and reading as well. I want to commend the team for a good work done. And also, Sir Chair, I'm kind of hearing some stuff through the grapevine that PSU will not be with us for long. Can you clarify that for the committee as well?
I don't know if you want to go there. I don't think so.
Oh, well, Chair, well, the member has brought it up. Yeah, I go on study leave in September of this year. So hopefully, this is my last PAC. I go on study leave in September to pursue my PhD at the University of the West Indies. Thank you.
All right. We wish you well, and it's leave, so you'll be back in the service, and we hope you apply what you have learned when you return to the service.
Thank you.
Thank you, the members from the Ministry of Health. I'll allow you to take your leave.
Thank you very much.
Members, in addition to the issues related to the Ministry of Health, we have a number of documents which we're going to formally table, which were circulated previously. From the Ministry of Finance, their responses to the special audit report on the TAJ and the Financial Services Commission. And while I'm not going to read them verbatim, I think it's important for the public to know what the issues are. At the last meeting when the TAJ was here, there were 3 matters that we sought a follow-up on. One related to the level of due diligence that was done to determine the appropriateness of the property in Manchester that was selected. And based on the response from the Financial Secretary, there is a very detailed documentation of the various options that were looked at by the TAJ and the decision as to why they chose to go with the particular building. So that's one issue that there's a response to formally. The second issue relates to the Office of the Information Commissioner, where I sought again the documentation in relation to, there was a request from the Glean, I believe, to TAJ to release the name of the lessor in this particular case. Based on what I've read here from the Office of the Information Commissioner, there was no prohibition in relation to releasing the name of the company, but there was the Data Protection Act. The Data Protection Act prohibits the personal name, but not the name of the company. That was my interpretation of the letter that was sent. And that's important because that issue is not specific. It was specific here to the TAJ, but it may arise in other cases. But the letter from the Office of the Information Commissioner said they could release the name of the lessor, not the individual involved. The third issue related to the NLA. I think members would remember there was a divergence of views as to whether the TAJ needed to consult with the National Lands Agency in relation to public bodies. Now, based on the letter from the CEO of the Commission of Lands and Let me just read it verbatim. Please be advised as follows, and this is from Ms. Cherise Walcott. Clause 5.5.4 of the Government of Jamaica Comprehensive Asset Management Policy for the Public Sector Asset Management Policy, inter alia, provides that, and I quote, no public body or individual shall enter into a rental or lease agreement, local or overseas, for land and buildings without the prior written permission of the relevant board of directors. In submitting requests for approval, justification, and the intended contract period must be provided to the board of directors for a decision to be taken. The justification must inform of the cost versus the benefit and the advice of the Commissioner of Lands. Each request for rental or lease should be considered on its own merit. The Tax Administration of Jamaica, being a public body, would therefore be required to seek the advice of the Commissioner of Lands in conducting valuations for properties leased by them. So this is the view of the Commissioner of Lands on this particular issue. So that's one set of issues. Related to the Financial Services Commission, we had also asked the FSC to provide some detail in relation to the separation package of the former executive director and why there was no action to pursue what was then considered an overpayment. In the document that has been provided, a very detailed response has been provided, which shows that they conducted what I would term a cost-benefit analysis and made a determination that if they sought to recover the money, it could have exposed the FSC to potential legal action. And there was a particular case that was cited as precedent, which would have probably had the government of Jamaica pay out somewhere in the region of $20-odd million to the former executive director. So based on that, a decision was made to leave things as is, as they felt it would have been the most economical and in the best interest of the FSC. Yes, Member Guy.
Chair, just out of curiosity, that opinion came from the Chief Legal Counsel, I think, of the FSC. Mm-hmm. Was there an opinion sought from the Attorney General's chambers as it relates to that? Because that was what hit me when I read it first to ask that question.
I think we would have, I don't think anybody here could answer that. I think that's something we would have to seek a follow-up from the Financial Services Commission on. There are two other matters related to the special audit of the Transport Authority. And I'm going to, I believe it's important to read this letter, which is dated June 18, 2024, addressed to the Permanent Secretary, Carol Palmer, from the Managing Director, Mr. Ralston Smith. And the heading is Auditor General Department Special Audit Report of the Transport Authority, Human Resource Administration and Procurement Practices. Since the sitting of the Public Accounts Committee meeting on November 14, 2023, the Transport Authority has conducted an internal review of the licensing regime and is awaiting instructions from the Audit Committee. Upon receipt of same, a decision will be taken on the way forward. Based on the information provided in the internal audit report, one of the recommendations was to seek the assistance of the police to investigate the matter on behalf of the Transport Authority. It appears on the face of it that the signature of a former managing director was forged on the Transport Authority's licensing committee decisions sheet. A more forensic analysis of this matter is required to authenticate this view. Accordingly, the authority has since taken steps to strengthen its licensing regime. Among the changes are: 1, license files are no longer approved at the desk of the managing director. 2, all license applications are brought before and approved by the licensing committee. 3, the licensing window for Hackney Carriage Road licenses is open and closed by the board. Based on the findings of the internal audit review, there is no evidence that employees of the authority are involved in the sale of licenses. Notwithstanding this, however, the authority awaits the review and instructions of the audit committee to have the matter interrogated by the applicable arm of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. It is important to note that the audit committee was chaired by the late Dr. Daniel Dawes, and the authority awaits the naming of a new chairperson. And this letter was sent by the managing director, Ralston Smith, to the permanent secretary. There is also,
my concern, Chair, in as much as the committee was chaired by the late Dr. Dawes, and bless his soul, the fact is that this was our meeting was in November of last year, and we should have at least the benefit of an interim report from that audit committee as to what the findings were, or at least the Transport Authority should have had an interim report on the audit committee's meeting. That is up to the point when the former chairman died. That would have been about 6 months at minimum.
Agreed, yes.
You know, so we need to find out from the Transport Authority what is the current situation, where they seized with any report from the then audit committee, even if it's an interim one.
agreed. And I know this House has recognized the contribution of Dr. Dawes, but I do agree that the Transport Authority should have a report that they can provide to us based on the very serious nature of the allegations that have been uncovered in their own internal probe. So we're tabling these responses. The Parliament's internal system will ensure that they are distributed so that the press and the public can have access to the responses from the MDAs. We are also going to be tabling a number of documents, as I indicated before, which are responses from MDAs in response to the committee asking them for clarification. And those responses were from agencies that were not called before the committee. And I think it's important to indicate that we do not necessarily call every single MDA to come and appear if we believe, based on the responses and with verification from the Auditor General's Department, that they are responding to the issues in a satisfactory manner. So to the public, they may not see people come here, but it doesn't mean that the work of the Auditor General's Department isn't being done, and it doesn't mean that the Parliament, through the PAC, is not following up on the issues that have been identified. I mean, we had, I think, of my recent memory, there was an audit done, I think, of PICA, if my recollection is correct. And based on the audit, it was satisfactory, and we didn't need to invite that agency to appear. So the work is being done, even though I'm saying the agencies don't necessarily come here if the matters are resolved. Member Guy?
Yes, Chair. There was another matter, and I think you might have gone to it, except for my interruption first. And that's related to the holding of gratuity payment from the MD. And an opinion was to be sought from the AG's chambers. We have not had sight of that. Could we also ask the Transport Authority to provide us with that? In spite of the fact that it's going to court, but I mean, we need that still.
Okay, well, that's, the committee clerk has noted that, and we'll follow up with that. So these documents are all tabled and will be circulated for the public and for those who are interested. We're also, we only received today the responses from the Ministry of Health. We haven't had an opportunity to go through those in detail, neither has the Auditor General, but again, those documents we'll ensure are made available to the public, so they are aware of it. Members, there is one outstanding matter in relation to the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development and Municipal Corporations. And there are still, a number of issues that have not been, that are outstanding and that remain in view, which the Auditor General and Member Guy and Member Sibley's, I'm just going to ask you for your attention on this. The Auditor General audit of the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, Municipal Corporations. There are a number of the issues which are in view or outstanding, which I believe requires us to take a closer look and make a determination about whether we bring that ministry back to the PAC to address those outstanding problems. So there is a PAC briefing report here, and I believe we should look at a date in the not too distant future. We know that Parliament will prorogue very shortly because with recess, or not prorogue, wrong term, recess for the summer. It is going to prorogue. I don't know if the members know anything about that. But we need to examine a date quite quickly so that we can do it before we go on recess. Do you want to use it, man?
Shouldn't we get the ministry's response, just like how we would have?
No, man, the response is there already, you know, which is included in the brief. But a number of the issues are still outstanding and being kept in view. So I think based on, and again, we consult generally with the Auditor General in terms of whether, we believe it's necessary to call back an entity. And
is it that the Auditor General is going to follow up before they are called back, because it is in view? Because I have sight of a letter that the Auditor General had written with regards to things that are in view with another matter. And I'm asking now, in light of that letter, and in light of what the chairman is suggesting, will the Auditor General Department will be doing a follow-up? Because if they're saying it's in view and they need to do some follow-up, is it productive to bring the ministry here without that kind of follow-up?
Thank you for the question, member. We did in fact do a follow-up. As a matter of fact, the matters reported relate to an ongoing project that is being undertaken by the department. So you heard the PS mention about the arrears in the financial statements, the 300 and odd. So we have a project that we are trying to, as best as possible, reduce the arrears in the financial statements, and we have started with the municipal corporation. So the matters that were highlighted in the annual report were matters coming out of the audits that were done under that project. So the project continues, and as we do subsequent audits, we do follow-ups. Well, the reports are made in the annual report, but primarily these audits are audits of financial statements.
Let me help you, Member Sibley. So there are a series of correspondence here, again, which we are tabling. The latest one is dated May 20th, 2024, from the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Henry Martin, in relation to this matter. So I believe the first thing, we need to go through the responses, determine whether we consider them appropriate and whether we need to bring them back here. But they're detailed here in terms of the responses. They wouldn't necessarily, they have already highlighted the issue in your annual report. And so the follow-up is really on our part to ensure that the issues are being satisfactorily addressed. But I do know, based on coming from the Auditor General's Department, there is still a concern here in relation to the municipal corporations.
Well, Mr. Chair, the concern is really the current situation with the municipal corporations, because if you look at the report, most of the accounts were disclaimers. The opinions issued were disclaimers. And as member would know, a disclaimer of opinion is a very, very serious thing in relation to financial
How many,
statements.
just if you, I don't know if you know.
A large percentage.
A large percentage, yes.
Significant percentage of the opinions were disclaimers.
Okay.
And the disclaimers were issued because the supporting documents were not available to support the financial statements. And so the Auditor General was not in a position to say whether or not the accounts were true and fair. So that is a very serious matter. And as it is now, we have not seen any significant improvements. And that is why we say it's a matter that we continue to monitor, because we are doing other audits, because we are trying to bring the accounts current. So we are doing other audits, and as time progresses, we will have updates on those other audits.
Well, based on what you have said, I do believe that it does require the ministry, because you're saying it is across the board in terms of the municipal corporation. So we're dealing with a systemic issue, and we have to find out from the ministry what is being done to correct it, because you're saying you cannot even provide an opinion because you just don't have the supporting documentation to do so. So that's a serious matter. So members, I will liaise with the committee clerk and to see what is available in terms of dates. We're coming close to recess to see whether we can meet again before then to look at this issue, to at least understand what is being done to address it and to correct the problem. Member Siblis?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the auditors. The disclaimer that you mentioned, which means that it is very pervasive, is that in any document from the Auditor General Department that specify the disclaimer, what element? Is it the element of the vouchers that I noticed that you said the permanent secretary spoke to, but it is is it the permanent secretary that was here with regards to the voucher, or the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Local Government?
No, what I mentioned was the arrears. The permanent secretary mentioned that there are 300 and odd arrears.
Okay.
That's a separate issue.
Okay.
It's a separate issue.
Arrears.
Right.
So the disclaimer is with regards
specific to the municipal corporation.
And arrears, is it disclaimer for more than one thing? Because as we know that when we use the word disclaimer in audit, it might be more than one thing that is pervasive or one thing that is still pervasive. So I'm asking you, is it arrears, full stop, or arrears and other thing that is pervasive? I just want to know.
So the arrears being mentioned here are the arrears in the submission of the financial statements. That is not the reason for the disclaimer.
Yes. So
right. So the disclaimers now are in relation to the absence of sufficient, appropriate evidence to support the financial statements that have been submitted to us.
Very well.
And these matters would have been were communicated to each municipal corporation as well as to the PS.
And we will get it here, because if we are going to call them to come before us, we would want to know what are these disclaimers.
Well,
that's what
members, you would be familiar with the process. When we do the financial statements audit, we issue an auditor's report, and that report would be attached to the financial statement. So it is up to the ministry and the municipal corporation to submit those financial statements for tabling in the House.
Are they required to do so or they're just required to send to the Ministry of Local Government?
Well, it would be as a part of their annual report. So for each, just like how other public bodies are required to submit their annual reports with their audited financial statements, they are also
All
required.
right, let me ask a specific question. I think we have 14 municipal corporations plus Portmore, which is how
13 plus Portmore.
13 plus Portmore, sorry. This problem exists in how many of that number?
So,
I know you said a
so
lot.
it's
but-
across the board,
Okay.
but we haven't audited all municipal corporations as yet because
Or you
we
have
have
not?
not. We
Okay.
have not.
But
so
the
if
ones
you
you
look at
have
the report,
audited, right.
it outlines the ones that we have
Okay.
audited so far. So for the others, we have a number of municipal corporations that have not yet submitted the statements, so we haven't started any audits for those. Yeah.
So Chairman, I ask for your guidance here. With regards to those reports, are those reports here? Because I might not have sight of it from my own
No, they wouldn't.
tardiness. I'm asking you
No,
those reports that has the disclaimer, because I am very interested in.
You mean disclaimer
seeing-
from the Auditor General's Department?
Yeah. It would
Were
be-
those in your annual report?
Yes.
Yes, so it would be in the
So it's
annual
in the
report.
it's
Yes.
Yes, they are in the
with
annual
disclaimer.
report.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
it's in the
asking.
annual report.
Thank you very much.
Well, based on what you have said, it sounds like a systemic issue,
Right.
which I believe has to be handled at the level of the ministry. So I think that's something
Right.
we need to address. You don't have a complete site, but based on what you have audited so far,
Right. So
the
just
issue is across the
So
board.
just to give you the specific figure, so to date we have issued 44 opinions, and of the 44, 38 were disclaimers.
38 of the 44 for
44.
municipal corporation
Right,
were disclaimers. And just to be clear, a disclaimer means you cannot satisfy yourself,
Cannot give an opinion.
cannot give an opinion
give an
on the
opinion
accounts.
based
Well,
on
that's a
the-
systemic
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
And I mean, billions of dollars are being spent. So, all right, we'll do, that's the next one that we have to invite here. All right, we'll look at a date. I'll work with the committee clerk to see how quickly we can have the Ministry of Local Government here. Are there any other matters, members? Member Wilson, can I get a motion for you for the adjournment? So moved, seconded by Member Siblis. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks.